8 to 10 pounds of fruit. That is what I pulled off a single bush in my backyard last summer. One plant sitting in a spot no bigger than a kitchen chair, and it came right back and did the same thing again this year. No ladder, no orchard, no waiting half a decade for a tree to grow up. That same little bush was already giving me fruit in its second year in the ground. And by its fourth year, it was producing more than Karen and I could eat fresh. Now here is the part that stopped me cold when I first learned it. This plant, the one quietly outproducing a fruit tree in a fraction of the space, was against the law to grow in America for 55 years. Not 55 days, 55 years, from 1911 all the way to 1966. And stay with me right to the end, because the real reason it got banned has almost nothing to do with the fruit itself. It comes down to one fungus and one completely different kind of tree. And once you understand how that works, you will see exactly why you can plant this in your own yard today with nothing to worry about. I'm Steve Calloway. I've been growing food in the same backyard here in the Midwest for more than 20 years, and for most of those years I've run side-by-side test beds and written down what actually happened, not what the label promised. My very first garden was a jungle of green leaves that gave me about a dozen sad tomatoes all summer. My wife Karen keeps the harvest log with me now, and these days our biggest problem is giving the food away fast enough. So when I tell you this bush out-earns its space, that is not a sales pitch. That is my log talking. Now when you picture growing your own fruit, you probably picture a tree, an apple tree, a peach tree, something tall you plant and then wait on. And that is the exact problem. A standard fruit tree wants a big open circle of yard, sometimes 20 feet across or more. It wants 5, 6, even 8 years before it pays you back in any real amount. And a lot of us simply do not have that kind of room or that kind of patience sitting on a regular suburban lot. Here is what actually works better for most backyards. Pound for pound of the ground you actually have, a fruit bush beats a fruit tree, and it is not particularly close. The plant I am talking about is the currant. It grows as a tidy bush, about 5 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide, and a healthy mature one gives you 8 to 10 pounds of fruit a year. 8 to 10 pounds off a footprint you could step over. And yes, it really was illegal. For 55 years, growing this in America was against federal law. I'm going to come back to exactly why, because the reason is not what most folks assume, and it is the whole key to understanding this plant. But first, let me show you why one little bush can outproduce a tree in the first place, because once you see the math, you're going to want one in the ground this season. Now, everything I'm about to show you, the planting, the feeding, and the pruning that feels wrong but doubles your fruit, all of it comes out of a system I've been refining in my test beds for years. I finally wrote the whole thing down, day by day, in a book called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is the exact 30-day plan I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant gives me, with no extra space and no expensive equipment. It runs from soil preparation all the way through harvest, one day at a time, and it works the same in raised beds, in-ground rows, or containers on a patio. It is 115 pages, and right now it is $17, marked down from $47. One good currant bush pays that back in a single summer. If you want it, getting it is simple. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, now let me show you why this bush runs circles around a tree. Let's start with the math, because this is where the currant earns its keep. A standard apple tree needs somewhere around 15 to 20 feet of open space to spread out. A currant bush needs about 3 to 4 feet, so right off the top, you can fit 4, 5, sometimes 6 currant bushes in the ground a single tree would demand. Now stack the time on top of that, plant a fruit tree, and you're often waiting 5 to 8 years for a real harvest. Plant a currant bush, and it starts fruiting in its second year. By its third or fourth year, it hits full stride. And a good bush keeps right on producing for 15 to 20 years after that. same patch of dirt, and one of them is feeding you the better part of a decade sooner. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you a single currant bush outproduces a full grown apple tree in total pounds. It does not. A big old apple tree will bury you in apples. But that is not the question most of us are actually asking. It is not about the biggest single plant. It is about the most food per square foot of the yard you really have. And on that math, the bush wins, and it wins big. One more thing that makes this easy. Most modern currant varieties are self-fertile, which just means one bush will set fruit all on its own. You do not need to buy two. You do not need a pollinator partner planted next to it, one bush, one corner, and you are in business. Now, I do not ask you to take my word for anything I have not tried myself, so let me tell you about a little test I ran right in my own yard. A few years back, I planted a young dwarf apple tree on one side of the garden, and that same spring, I put in 3 currant bushes along the fence on the other side. Same season, same soil, same weather, all of it written down in Karen's log. Here's how that played out. That first summer and the second, the apple tree gave me nothing but leaves. It was busy growing up, which is exactly what young trees do. The currants, meanwhile, handed me a light little harvest that second year, just enough to know they meant business. By year 3, those 3 currant bushes together were giving us more fruit than we knew what to do with, and the apple tree was still working on its very first real crop. Now I like that apple tree. It is coming along just fine. But if you had told me back then that 3 bushes on a fence line would outfeed the tree for years while taking up a fraction of the room, I might not have believed you. The log believed it. Same space, same effort, completely different result. Here is the part that surprised even me when I first tested it. This bush does not need your best, sunniest ground. Most fruit is greedy about sun. Tomatoes sulk in the shade. Peppers pout. But a currant will grow and fruit in partial shade, in that strip along the north side of the house, or under the edge of a bigger tree where nothing else wants to live. Now, I will be straight with you. Full sun still gives you the heaviest crop, and up here in the north, that is what you're after. But a currant in part shade will still hand you around 4 pounds of fruit off a single bush. 4 pounds from the shady corner you've been mowing around and ignoring for years. That is real fruit coming out of ground that was giving you absolutely nothing before. And cold does not scare this plant one bit. Most currant varieties are hardy down to zone 3. That covers almost the entire northern half of the country, right through the kind of winters that kill a peach tree dead. For those of us here in the Midwest, that matters more than just about anything. A plant that shrugs off our winters and fruits in our shade is a plant worth finding room for. And think about what that really means for your yard. Every one of us has a spot like that. The strip beside the garage, the bed under the big maple that only gets sun for half the day, the corner that is too shady for tomatoes and too small for a tree. For most fruit, those spots are dead ground. For a currant, they are an opportunity. Remember that fungus I mentioned, the one that got this whole thing banned? Hold that thought, because it is coming, and it is the reason a plant this useful ever got treated like an outlaw in the first place. Now, a quick word on which currant to actually buy, because there are a few kinds and it helps to know the difference before you go shopping. The heavy hitter is the black currant. That is the one that gives you those big 8 to 10 pound harvests. And it carries a bold, deep, almost musky flavour that folks either love straight off the bush or turn into the best jam you have ever put on toast. If pure amount of fruit is your goal, black currant is where I would start. Then you have red currants and white currants. These are close cousins. They're a little more delicate, a little more tart sweet, and they hang in gorgeous little strings like strands of jewels. They usually give you a bit less than the black, more in the 2 to 4 pound range per bush, but they are beautiful and they are wonderful in jelly. And I will mention one more member of the family, the gooseberry. Same clan as the currant, grown almost exactly the same way, just a bigger, rounder berry on a thornier bush. It got swept up in this very same ban. for the very same reason. So everything I'm telling you today applies to gooseberries right alongside the currants. Whichever color you choose, here's the one thing I want you to look for when you buy, and it ties directly into that band story I keep promising you. Look for a variety that is described as resistant to white pine blister rust. That resistance is the whole reason this fruit ever came back, and I will explain it fully in just a few minutes. Buy a resistant variety, and you have quietly sidestepped the entire problem that got this plant in trouble in the first place. All right, let's get one in the ground. This part is simple, and I'm going to give it to you one step at a time so nothing gets muddled. First, pick your spot. Full sun is best, but as I said, part shade will work just fine. Give each bush 3 to 4 feet of room on every side. That is 3 to 4 feet because a crowded current gets poor airflow, and poor airflow invites disease. Second, check your soil. Currants like it slightly acidic, right around a pH of 6 to 6.5, and they want ground that drains well and does not sit soggy. If you do not know your number, a cheap soil test kit will tell you in an afternoon. Third, plant it a little deeper than it sat in the pot. This is the one step most folks skip. Set the bush about 2 inches deeper than the soil line it came with. 2 inches deeper. That buried little section of stem pushes out fresh new shoots from down at the base, and those new shoots are exactly where next year's fruit is going to come from. Fourth, water it in well the same day you plant it, and then keep the soil evenly moist while it settles in. Currants have shallow roots, so they dry out fast. Do not let that root zone bake. And if you are short on ground entirely, do not count yourself out. A currant grows just fine in a large pot, something around 16 to 18 inches across, set out on a patio or a balcony. Those roots do not run deep, so the bush is perfectly happy in a container as long as you keep it watered. That is the whole planting job. Take your time with it. There is no rush at all. And a bush you plant carefully in one quiet afternoon will feed you for the next 20 years. Now, feeding. And this is where I have to tell on myself again because I learned this one the hard way. My very first garden, the one I told you about, was a jungle. Big, beautiful, dark green leaves everywhere and almost no fruit to show for it. I had piled on the nitrogen because I figured more feeding had to mean more food. I was wrong. All that nitrogen just told the plant to grow leaves instead of fruit. The garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. A currant is the very same story. Feed it heavy on nitrogen and you will grow a gorgeous green bush with hardly a berry on it. So here is what actually works. In early spring, before growth really takes off, give each bush a modest, balanced feeding. 1/4 to 1/3 of a pound of a balanced fertilizer per bush is plenty. A couple of inches of well-rotted manure or finished compost spread around the base does the same job, and it feeds the soil while it is at it. Then 2 more simple things, and both of them matter. Water first. Currants have those shallow roots, so they want steady, even moisture, right around 1 to 2 inches a week from the time they flower through the time you harvest. And mulch second. Lay down 2 to 4 inches of wood chips or straw around the base of the bush. That mulch holds the moisture in, and it keeps those shallow roots cool through the summer heat, which currants really do not enjoy. Balanced food, steady water, good mulch. Feed for fruit, not for leaves. That right there is the difference between a green bush and a loaded one. Okay, here's the step that feels completely wrong the very first time you do it. Pruning. And with a currant, pruning does something most folks do not expect. It is how you force the plant to give you more fruit. Let me give you the why behind it, because once you understand this, you will never skip it again. A currant makes its best fruit on young wood, meaning canes that are 1, 2, or 3 years old. Once a cane gets older than 3 years, it turns woody and lazy, and its fruit drops off hard. So every single year, in late winter, while the bush is still asleep, you go in and you cut those oldest canes right out at the ground. Here is the simple rule to follow. Count your canes. You want to keep somewhere around 8 to 10 strong, healthy canes on the bush, a good mix of 1, 2, and 3-year-old wood. Anything older than 3 years, cut it clean out at the base. Anything weak, spindly, or crossing through the middle of the bush, cut that out too. Now I know how this feels. Standing there cutting healthy looking wood off a plant seems like a mistake. Every instinct in you says, leave it be, but this one move is what separates a bush that gives you a couple of pounds from a bush that gives you 8 to 10. You are not hurting it. You are pushing all of its energy into the young wood that actually fruits. Same bush, same soil, completely different result, and the only difference is a few cuts made at the right time of year. And that fungus I keep promising to explain, we are almost there. Let me cover one more thing first, and then I'm going to tell you the real story behind the ban, because it is a good one. Before we get to that reveal, let me save you the single most common heartbreak with this plant, which is a big, healthy-looking bush that just will not fruit. If that ever happens to you, it is almost always one of three things, and every one of them is fixable. The first, and by a mile the most common, is too much nitrogen. I already confessed my jungle to you. If your bush is all lush green leaves and no berries, you are feeding it to grow foliage. Ease off the nitrogen, switch to a balanced feed, and it will get the message. The second is no pruning. A bush that never gets those old canes cut out slowly chokes itself on its own dead wood, and the fruit falls off year after year. That is the pruning we just walked through. Old canes out, young canes in. The third is dry roots. Remember, currants root shallow. If that bush dries out hard while it is flowering and setting fruit, it will drop its whole crop just to save itself. Steady water, good mulch, and that problem is gone. Too much nitrogen, no pruning, or dry roots. 9 times out of 10, it is one of those three. The garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. And a bush that is fed right, pruned right, and watered right will pay you back every single year. Last piece before the big reveal, harvest. Currants ripen in early to midsummer, usually sometime in July, for most of us. You will know they are ready when they have gone deep and full in colour and when they taste right. And here is a nice thing about them. They hold on the bush. They do not all go soft and drop on you inside 2 days the way some fruit does. You get a harvest window of a few weeks, so there is no panic picking. The easy way to pick is to take the whole little cluster at once, the same way you would pull a small bunch of grapes, and then strip the berries off the stem afterward at your kitchen table. It goes a lot faster that way. Now, a fair warning. Fresh off the bush, currants are tart. Good and tart. Some folks love them straight, but most of us do something with them. And this is where all that fruit really pays off, because currants freeze beautifully. You can put up 8 to 10 pounds without much fuss at all, and they cook down into some of the best jam, jelly and syrup you will ever taste. Karen turns ours into jam every August, and it is gone by spring. Every single year. So that is the plant. Small footprint, fruit in 2 years, grows in the shade, shrugs off the cold, and hands you 8 to 10 pounds, a bush for 20 years running. Which brings us, finally, to the question you have been waiting on this whole time. If it is this good, why on earth was it ever illegal? Here is the real story, and it is not a conspiracy. Nobody was hiding a miracle fruit from you just to sell you something else. It is stranger than that, and honestly, a good deal more interesting. That currant bush has a quiet partner in crime, a fungus with a real tongue twister of a name, white pine blister rust. Now that fungus cannot survive on the currant alone, and here is the strange part, it needs 2 completely different plants to finish its life cycle. It needs a currant or a gooseberry, and it needs a white pine tree. It lives part of its life on the one, then sends its spores drifting over to the other and back again, round and round. And here is the key to the whole thing. That fungus barely bothers the currant at all. The currant just quietly carries it along, but when it jumps over onto a white pine, it kills that tree. Now, back in the early 1900s, white pine was one of the most valuable things growing anywhere in this country. We are talking about a timber industry worth an absolute fortune. Whole family fortunes built on white pine lumber. And this fungus, riding back and forth on innocent little currant bushes, started killing those pines by the millions. So the government sat down and did the cold math. The pine was worth a fortune. The currant, to them, was expendable. And in 1911, they made their choice. They banned the currant. Understand what that means. The fruit was never a danger to you or your family. It was a danger to a tree that happened to be worth a great deal of money to a great many people. So the currant took the fall. Crews went out across the country and tore currant bushes right out of the ground and burned them. This was not some quiet little rule on paper either. Men were paid to go hunting for these bushes and destroy them farm by farm and county by county. That is how seriously the money took it. And that federal ban stood for 55 long years, all the way until 1966, which was plenty of time for most Americans to forget this fruit had ever existed at all. And here is the good news, the part that matters for your backyard right now. Plant breeders went and solved it. There are current varieties today that are fully resistant to that fungus, bushes the rust simply cannot use as a host anymore. The old problem is gone. The federal ban came off back in 1966, and one by one, the states cleared it too. With New York, the very last one to lift its rule back in 2003. A small handful of states still keep some restrictions on the books, mostly in places where white pine is grown for timber, so do take 1 minute to check your own state's rules before you plant. But for the great majority of us, this fruit has been perfectly legal to grow for decades now. The outlaw got pardoned a long, long time ago. Most folks just never got the news. And that is exactly the kind of thing the whole protocol is built on. Tested in my own beds, cheap to do, and written out day by day so you can just follow right along. It is called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. Inside it, you will find the Big 7 yield killers that quietly hold a garden back, how to feed for fruit instead of leaves, and that pruning that feels wrong but multiplies your harvest. 115 pages, $17 against $47, and it pays for itself the very first summer you use it. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there it is, the little bush that beats a tree. Fruit in its second year, happy in the shade, tough right through our winters, 8 to 10 pounds a season, and legal across most of the country for a whole lot longer than most folks realize. Now tell me in the comments what you are growing this year and your best harvest number so far. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you the one cheap change to how you water your tomatoes that stop my plants from cracking and splitting every August and roughly double the fruit that actually made it to the kitchen. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.